Hello there. Thanks for coming along again. This is probably the penultimate clip in the little batch that I'm doing to help people who are starting their academic year this week, next week, or very soon. So in the last clip, we looked at things that we might want to start implementing from day one. And this clip is a follow-on from that. I talked about getting students used to the idea that they're going to move from day one. And I'd like to share with you a practical technique that I like to use. First of all, we want things to go well in our lessons from day one. That's part of the reason sometimes where we feel slightly jittery or apprehensive, maybe. But, you know, we don't know who we're going to get, what their behaviour is going to be like. And at the end of the day, our learners' behaviour is also their responsibility. So, you know, don't expect to be able to fix everything the first day. It may take you months to get things where you want them to go. And don't feel that you need to do all that in the lesson either. And don't expect perfection, you know, because none of us are perfect. And especially when we get together as teenagers in groups on the first day, you know, our behaviour is probably not going to be perfect. So don't worry about it too much, but we see what we've got and then we start to make adjustments. But I think it does help if what we don't want is we don't want to go in and you know, come on too heavy. You know, I'm laying down the law. This is the way it's going to be. But we can do things with a smile, as I always say, before we get to a confrontational situation. So right off the bat, I like to explain to my learners, even if I don't move them around lots and lots in the first lesson, I say to them, I'm going to be asking you to work with everybody in the class. I'm going to be moving you around regularly. It's just how these classes are going to be. So I think the first thing is just to tell them that, so they are forewarned, so that in your second or third class, when you do start to want to repair people and put them into different groups, it doesn't come as a complete shock. That's the first thing. Second thing, obviously in the first lesson, if you do move them about a little bit, you get them into that routine, into that mindset first of all. And I think in clip 7, if you haven't seen it by now, might be a good time to watch it. Clip 7 I recorded last year and I called it Making Your First Lesson of the Year Useful. And it's about using the first lesson as a kind of data collecting, almost like a sort of evaluation day. And in it I recommend that you pair up students and get them speaking in pairs. And there you could repair them with other partners and get people moving just to get them used to the idea. So those are the two first mini practical steps I would take in the first lesson to get them used to the idea that they're going to be moving about. 1, tell them, and 2, actually ask them to move on the first day before they get too settled. Another thing you can do sometimes if you're finding that your students are putting up resistance moving is just say to them, you know, okay, you're happy sat there, yeah? I can see you're happy sat there, yeah? Well, I'm going to ask you to move for this next activity, then you can move back. So we have a certain amount of concession on both sides. So that's another mini technique. However, the thing I like the most is something I've called the combinations. And what it involves is, well, the way I phrase it to my students is I will say something like this, and I'll mention this probably in the third lesson, maybe in the second week, once I've had a good look at everybody and I've got the measure of them. I'll say, okay, so I've been moving you about and putting you into groups manually. I've been saying, okay, you go with you, we go with you, you 3 together, 1, 2 here, stuff like that. However, from now on, when I say, people, can you get into combination A, please? Then I want you to get into these groups. And at this point, you should see just a little slide with groupings for a small class. This is an example class here. And when I say combination B, I'd like you to get into these groups. And when I say combination C, these will be the groupings. And what we can do with that piece of paper is to put it on the wall, stick it next to the board, or have a spare copy of it in our folder to put up if we can't leave stuff on the wall between lessons for any reason, or if we're moving about. So that the students can see, there's some thought gone into this. And if they object, okay, I prefer work with this person, sorry, it's combination B, that's just how it is. We can sort of use some sort of distancing between ourselves and what we have there. If the students say, but teacher, why these? You know, why these combinations? Oh, don't worry about that. It's just teacher reasons. You know, or don't worry about it. Just small decisions. That's what I get paid to do. Make these decisions. Also, we can change these combinations as we go through the first term. But what it allows us to do is to sit at home and think about who we want working with who in various situations. Because the thing is, if you're in the middle of a busy class and they're doing an activity and you think, okay, in the next activity I want to change the groups. So, okay, I want this one, this one, this one. Okay, guys, great. Now I'd like you to get into these groups. You three together and you three together. Then I want you two. And what happens normally in a busy lesson, in the heat of the moment, you get to the last couple of groups and it's like, oh no, now I've got these working together. And it's really difficult to group them all up in perfect groups in the heat of the moment. So, as I say, this method allows you to sit at home with a cup of coffee, with a cup of tea, with the class list and carefully think, okay, so who do I want working together when I want sort of students that are complementary, students that are a bit calmer, paired up with students who are a bit more excitable. So we might have a nice happy medium. And then that would be these. Who do I want working together when I want the more advanced learners in the group working together, and maybe the slightly weaker learners working together? Who do I want there? Who do I want when I want mixed ability pairings, maybe where I want the more advanced learners working with the struggling learners? Those could be your criteria. There might be other criteria. Who do I want when I want people who are obviously friends working together, or people that I never normally work very much together, so they might actually have something interesting to tell each other. There can be all different types of motives for the different pairings. Like I say, you don't have to tell your class exactly why that is. They might have an inkling, they might try to guess your teacher logic, but again, we don't need to get trapped within our own systems. That's not a system they need to know about. You could share it with them at some point if you want to, and if they're taking an interest, but not because you feel you need to in order to get that to work. You can just say, for some tasks, some groups work better, for other tasks, other groups work better, and I'm experimenting with it. I appreciate your cooperation, something like that. So right from the first lesson, even though you might not be using the combinations, what you can do is one of your jobs can be sort of to collect a little bit of data on who works together well, who are the excitable characters, who are the calmer people, who have the more sort of who have maybe slightly more responsible, mature, and have a positive influence on others. And that, so you can be making all little notes to help you when maybe after your first weekend or towards the end of the second week, coming into the third week, you want to make up your combination charts. And like I say, having something like that on the wall behind you near the board, it really does change it. Okay, combination B, boom, 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 boom. Combination for another activity, combination A. It doesn't mean that you can't manually repair people or put them into groups. You don't have to follow your own system, like I say, but it is quite helpful. If you use that and you find it helps you, by all means come back to me on the channel. Let me know, let other teachers know. I appreciate your comments always. So, good luck with your teaching in the first few weeks of term. Strength and energy as always.